I stood frozen in the community hall as my name flashed across the donation screen, misspelled, stretched too large, like it was being laughed at before anyone even opened their mouth. The letters looked wrong, unfamiliar, as if they were already trying to separate me from my own identity. The lights were bright, the air thick with perfume and applause residue, and I felt suddenly exposed, like someone had ripped the skin off my reputation and pinned it to the wall. Then the sound came. A sharp, ugly beep. The charity check bounced. My nephew's charity check. For half a second, there was confusion. Chairs shifting, people blinking at the screen. And then the laughter hit. Not loud at first. A ripple. A few snorts. Someone coughing to hide it. And then all eyes turned toward me at once, heavy and accusing, like I'd been waiting for this moment to fail on purpose. My sister-in-law didn't hesitate. She leaned into the microphone like she'd rehearsed it, her voice steady, concerned, polished. "There seems to have been a mistake," she said, then tilted her head in my direction. "Unfortunately, my sister-in-law handles the family funds. This is what happens when money is mismanaged." The words, mismanaged family funds, echoed through the speakers, through my chest, through every year I had spent sacrificing quietly. Heat rushed to my face so fast it made me dizzy. I could hear whispers slicing through the room, sharp, fast, merciless. I caught fragments. I always wondered about her. So embarrassing. Poor kid. Each whisper landed like a blade, precise and personal, cutting deeper because I couldn't defend myself without looking guilty. I didn't move. I couldn't. Somewhere in the crowd, a phone lifted. I saw the lens pointed straight at me, zooming in, capturing my stillness, my shock, my silence. My humiliation was being packaged into content. My frozen face turned into something people would replay later with commentary and judgment. The host cleared his throat and looked directly at me. "Ma'am," he said, sharp and impatient like I was wasting his time. "Would you like to explain what happened?" His words weren't an invitation. They were a demand. A spotlight tightened around me, waiting for me to crack. My mouth tasted like metal. Bitter. Heavy. That was the moment it hit me. I had been set up. Not privately, not quietly, but deliberately, publicly, in front of the entire neighborhood. This wasn't an accident. This was a performance, and I was cast as the villain without my consent. My phone started buzzing in my hand before I could even breathe. Message after message. Names I recognized. Numbers I didn't. Judgment moved faster than truth ever could. "Is this real? How could you? You should be ashamed." Each vibration felt like another nail sealing the story they were already telling about me. I watched my reputation collapse in real time. The applause that had filled the room minutes earlier didn't come back for me. Empathy didn't either. There was only that awful silence mixed with curiosity, like everyone was waiting to see how badly I would fall. I nodded once. I forced a weak smile that didn't belong to me anymore. My legs carried me off the stage even though my hands were shaking so badly I thought I might drop my phone. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I knew if I did, I would see satisfaction where family should have been. And as I stepped out of the light, something inside me went very still. Not broken, not loud, just cold and focused. The kind of stillness that comes right before a storm chooses its direction. I made myself a promise in that silence. I would never stand in front of anyone again and beg for dignity. Not from family, not from strangers, not ever. I remembered the years I raised my nephew when his parents were absent, when their excuses came easily and responsibility somehow landed on my shoulders without a discussion. I remembered packing his lunches, signing his permission slips, sitting in plastic chairs at school meetings while everyone assumed I was just helping out, not stepping in where others had stepped away. I became constant in his life because someone had to be. I recalled skipping vacations without making a scene about it. I told myself beaches could wait, rest could wait. His school trips couldn't. His braces couldn't. I watched my savings drain into orthodontist bills and class excursions, smiling while signing checks, telling myself this was what family did. Every sacrifice felt temporary back then, like love would eventually circle back to me. I carried the weight of being the reliable aunt, the one people leaned on and forgot to thank. I was the backup plan, the solution, the quiet fixer. When things went right, it was normal. When things went wrong, it was suddenly my responsibility. I wore that role like armor, not realizing how heavy it had become. My own dreams were shelved quietly, without an argument or announcement. One sacrifice at a time, I folded them away. Career risks I didn't take, passions I postponed, rest I denied myself. I told myself there would be time later, that stability mattered more than desire. I didn't notice how small my life was becoming compared to everyone else's comfort. I had trusted my sister-in-law with shared accounts and verbal agreements, the kind families make when they believe blood replaces paperwork. We spoke in reassurances instead of contracts. She looked me in the eye and said, "We're in this together." And I believed her because I wanted to. She once called me her safety net, said it with a soft laugh and a grateful smile. "I don't know what we'd do without you," she told me, her hand resting lightly on my arm as she took what she needed. At the time, it felt like appreciation. I didn't realize a net is only valued for how much it can carry. I ignored the small red flags when they appeared. Missing receipts that were explained away, questions that were met with irritation instead of answers, a sudden coldness when I asked for clarity. I told myself I was overthinking, that trust meant not counting every detail. I believed family loyalty meant silence and endurance. I thought love was proven by how much discomfort I could tolerate without complaining. I swallowed my doubts and trained myself not to ask too much, convinced that patience was a virtue even when it hurt. My husband warned me. He spoke carefully, not wanting to offend me, not wanting to insult my loyalty. "Something doesn't feel right," he said more than once. I defended them every time. I told him he didn't understand our family, that I had it under control, that trust mattered more than suspicion. That belief didn't come from nowhere. I traced my need to be needed back to childhood neglect, to learning early that attention came only when I was useful. I learned how to earn affection through service, how to disappear emotionally while still being indispensable. Being useful had always been my way to earn love. I knew how to give. I didn't know how to protect myself. I confused endurance with strength and sacrifice with worth. That night, after the laughter, after the whispers, after my name was dragged across the screen like a mistake, the old wound reopened. It wasn't new pain. It was familiar, raw, and exposed. And for the first time, I couldn't pretend it didn't hurt. After the event, the neighborhood changed overnight. People who used to wave crossed the street instead. Some offered hollow sympathy, the kind that never meets your eyes. "I'm sure it's all a misunderstanding," they said, already backing away, already convinced. Their pity felt worse than their judgment. It confirmed that the story about me was spreading and sticking. Within hours, my sister-in-law blocked my calls, straight to voicemail. Then nothing. No replies, no explanations, just silence where access used to be. That silence wasn't confusion. It was strategy. She didn't want a conversation. She wanted control of the narrative. The next morning, a lawyer's letter arrived. Thick paper, formal tone, cold language. It accused me of fraud, of financial misconduct, of betraying family trust. My hands trembled as I read it, not from guilt, but from disbelief. She had moved faster than I expected, faster than decency ever would. I opened the accounts, every shared file, every record I'd once trusted blindly. And there it was, transactions I had never authorized, transfers made late at night, withdrawals disguised as routine expenses. Numbers didn't lie, but they had been carefully arranged to point at me. Screenshots began circulating online soon after. Cropped, edited, context erased. Posts painted me as greedy, careless, dishonest. Comments filled with strangers who knew nothing about me but felt entitled to judge everything. I watched my character get rewritten by people who had never shared a meal at my table. At first, panic rose fast and hot, tightening my chest, making it hard to breathe. Then anger followed, sharper, steadier, and beneath that anger, something unexpected settled in. Clarity. Clear enough to see that this wasn't chaos, it was orchestration. I began collecting everything: bank statements, emails, text messages, timestamps. I printed copies, saved backups, labeled folders. Each document felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Proof replaced fear, one page at a time. At night, I replayed old conversations in my head. her tone, her pauses, the way she redirected questions. I heard manipulation I had missed when I was trying so hard to be agreeable. Words I once thought were casual now sounded calculated. My nephew stopped responding. Messages went unread, calls unanswered. His loyalty had been quietly rewritten by lies whispered when I wasn't there to defend myself. That loss hurt more than the rumors. It felt like being erased from his life without a goodbye. At the grocery store, I overheard coworkers whispering near the produce aisle. They lowered their voices when they saw me, but not fast enough. My name slipped out between assumptions and half-truths. I pushed my cart forward anyway, head high, pulse steady. Each insult hardened my resolve instead of breaking it. Every glance, every whisper, every accusation sharpened my focus. I realized something important in those moments. I didn't owe anyone an explanation without listening ears. So I stopped explaining myself. I stopped defending my name in conversations designed to tear it apart. I started documenting everything. Quietly, precisely, because I knew the truth didn't need volume. It needed timing. Late one night, when the house was silent and the weight of everything pressed hardest, my phone rang with an unknown number. The screen glowed against the dark, and for a moment I considered letting it stop on its own. Something told me not to. I answered quietly, my voice steady even though my heart wasn't. "Aunty," he said, and his voice cracked instantly. It was my nephew. He was crying, struggling to breathe between words, apologizing over and over like he was afraid I might hang up. Each apology landed heavy, soaked in fear and guilt. I closed my eyes and listened, letting him speak without interruption. He confessed that he'd been looking for a school file on his mother's laptop when he found folders he didn't recognize. Accounts that weren't supposed to exist. Spreadsheets hidden behind innocuous names. His voice dropped when he said he knew immediately something was wrong. "She told me you were lying," he whispered. "But the numbers, they didn't match." One by one, files arrived on my phone. Ledgers, transfer histories, documents with signatures that looked like mine but weren't. Forged lines where my name had been practiced and perfected. I scrolled through them slowly, my hands no longer shaking. With every page, the confusion that had haunted me dissolved into something solid and undeniable. The puzzle finally snapped into place. Not with a bang, but with a cold, exact click. Every accusation, every edit, every perfectly timed humiliation. It all made sense now. I wasn't careless. I was convenient. In that moment, I realized my calm had unsettled them more than any outburst ever could. While they expected me to panic, to cry publicly, to defend myself desperately, I had stayed still, and that stillness had made them sloppy. My lawyer reviewed the files the next morning. He didn't soften his reaction. "This is devastating," he said, his voice tight with certainty. "They didn't just cross a line, they erased it." Hearing that wasn't validation, it was confirmation. I had been right to wait. For the first time since that night in the hall, I felt power return to my spine. Not rage, not revenge-fueled excitement. Power. The quiet kind that comes from knowing the truth is finally standing behind you. I told my nephew to stay silent and safe. I told him none of this was his burden to carry publicly. "You've already done enough," I said, and meant it. He agreed, relieved, trusting me again in a way that felt fragile and precious. I stopped sleeping from fear and started sleeping from focus. My mind no longer raced in circles. It moved forward deliberately. Each night's rest felt like sharpening a blade, not running from one. The humiliation that once replayed itself without permission transformed into strategy. I no longer saw myself frozen under bright lights. I saw steps, sequences, outcomes. I made a decision then, clear and final. My response would be precise, not loud. Because the most brutal revenge doesn't scream. It waits. I requested a formal audit through the charity board without announcing it to anyone. No warnings, no emotional appeals, just paperwork submitted cleanly, professionally, the way people do when they know the truth will survive scrutiny. I let the process move forward while rumors still breathed, while she still smiled. Subpoenas followed, cold and unavoidable. Bank records were forced into daylight, dragged out of shadows where they had been carefully hidden. Accounts that were never meant to be seen together suddenly sat side by side, telling a story no amount of charm could rewrite. At the emergency meeting, I walked in composed, dressed simply, nothing dramatic, nothing defensive. I took my seat without acknowledging the stares. My pulse was steady. I had already lived through the worst part. Everything after this was just procedure. My sister-in-law sat across the table and smirked when she saw me. It was the same look she'd worn at the community hall, confident, dismissive, certain I had nothing left to surprise her with. She leaned back in her chair like this was going to be another performance she could control. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her directly. I pressed play. The recordings filled the room. Her voice, casual and careless, discussing transfers she thought were untraceable. Silence fell hard as everyone recognized it instantly. She shifted in her seat, the smirk fading. The room changed as spreadsheets appeared on the screen. Numbers lined up in a way her story never had. Transfers looping through personal accounts. Withdrawals timed around charity events. The facts stood where lies had been standing minutes before. The auditor spoke next, calm and precise, explaining the embezzlement in clinical detail. No emotion, no judgment, just evidence, laid out piece by piece. Each sentence tightened the space around her as questions closed in from every side. I watched her face drain of color. Confidence collapsed into confusion, then panic. She tried to interrupt, to laugh it off, to redirect, but the momentum was gone. For the first time, she wasn't controlling the room. The board didn't argue for long. The vote was swift. Suspension effective immediately. The word echoed louder than any accusation I'd ever imagined saying myself. When the doors opened, police officers were already waiting quietly outside. Not dramatic, not rushed, just present, prepared. Reality finally catching up. I met her eyes as she stood, shaking now, and I didn't glare. I didn't smile. I thanked her, calmly, for teaching me boundaries. The words landed heavier than anger ever could. Cameras caught everything as she was escorted out. Her lowered head, her broken composure. I remained seated, hands folded, unmoving. For once, I wasn't the spectacle. I was the ending. Charges were filed without ceremony, stamped and dated, the kind of paperwork that doesn't care about family titles or excuses. Restitution was ordered in numbers that finally told the truth. Seeing it written there felt heavier than relief. It felt final. The system had spoken in a language she couldn't interrupt. Online, the posts vanished almost shyly. One by one, accusations were deleted as quietly as they had appeared. No apologies attached, no explanations, just empty spaces where lies had lived. The silence of their absence was louder than the noise had ever been. Neighbors began apologizing soon after. Some caught me by the mailbox. Others sent awkward messages late at night. "We didn't know," they said. "We're so sorry." I nodded, polite, distant. Some apologies arrived too late to repair anything. They only confirm how alone you were when it mattered. My nephew moved in with me. His suitcase light, his eyes heavy with regret. Trust didn't snap back into place. It rebuilt slowly, carefully, through shared dinners and quiet conversations. We didn't rush forgiveness. We let consistency do the work. I reclaimed my name legally and emotionally. Court records corrected the story. So did my posture when I walked into rooms again. I stopped shrinking. I stopped bracing myself for judgment. My name belonged to me again. Therapy helped me untangle guilt from responsibility. I learned that just because I had carried something didn't mean it was mine to begin with. I learned how often I'd apologized for being used. Saying that out loud changed everything. I closed the shared accounts without hesitation and opened one just for myself. No explanations. No justifications. Watching that balance exist without anyone else's fingerprints on it felt like breathing fresh air after years underground. Silence returned to my life, but this time it felt earned. Not the silence of fear or isolation, but the kind that comes after storms have passed and nothing is chasing you anymore. I stopped performing kindness like a duty and started practicing self-respect like a skill. I gave when I chose to, not when I was pressured. I listened to discomfort instead of dismissing it. "Anira?" The community learned something they hadn't expected. That calm doesn't mean weak. That quiet people still keep records. That patience doesn't erase memory. And I learned something too. Justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it arrives softly, signs its name, and leaves peace behind. That peace settled in where fear used to live, and for the first time in a long time, I let it stay. I look back now and see how humiliation tried to shrink me, how it was meant to fold me inward until I disappeared into shame. It failed. It bruised me, yes, but it didn't erase me. What was meant to make me small ended up carving me sharper. I speak to anyone listening who is being quietly exploited, who feels the pressure to stay polite while being drained. If your generosity is being used as a weapon against you, know this. You're not foolish, and you're not weak. You're being tested by people who mistake silence for permission. I learned that patience can be sharper than rage. Anger burns fast and leaves traces. Patience watches, waits, and remembers. While others rush to destroy, patience gathers proof and chooses the moment that cannot be undone. I won't pretend I wasn't afraid. I was. I stood still while fear screamed inside me, while my name was being twisted without my consent. Courage didn't mean I felt strong. It meant I didn't move when they expected me to fall apart. If there's one truth I want you to carry with you, it's this. Evidence is louder than accusations. Lies can travel quickly, but facts don't get tired. They wait. And when they speak, they end conversations instead of starting them. I also acknowledge the cost of staying silent too long. Silence can protect you for a while, but it can also train others to overstep. I paid that price, and I learned from it. Set boundaries before resentment grows teeth. Boundaries aren't cruelty. They're clarity. They tell people exactly where you end and where respect begins. To those who supported me when it mattered, who didn't need explanations to stand beside me, thank you. Your quiet faith held me together more than you'll ever know. I ask you to reflect honestly on who benefits from your kindness. If giving leaves you empty and blamed, it's time to ask harder questions. If this story echoes something in your life, share it below. You're not alone, even when it feels that way. Protect your name. Protect your peace. No one else will do it for you the way you must. And remember this, calm revenge isn't cruel. It's final.